Thomas Broughan. You've 30 seconds.
Yeah, Minister, just looking at the Exchequer returns for October, I note that income tax is something like €94 million, or 0.6% below your target. VAT, nearly €286 million, I think, and 2.6% below target. And just wonder if you're concerned with those figures, given obviously that the two taxes together make up 2/3 of revenue. And are we beginning to see, Minister, already the impact of Brexit on domestic demand? And are your Budget 2016 and Budget 2017 figures beginning to unravel? Thanks.
Minister, you have 2 minutes.
In October 2016 saw the Exchequer record a deficit of €2.429 million as compared to a deficit of €2.184 million in the same period last year. The €245 million increase in the deficit is driven by an increase in voted expenditure, an expected reduction in non-tax revenue and a decline in banking-related receipts relative to the same period last year. All of these are partially offset by increased tax receipts. At end October, cumulative tax revenue of €36.7 billion had been collected. This is 1.7%, or €613 million ahead of targeted forecast, and up 4.7%, or €1.651 million on the same period last year. Corporation tax and excess duties are ahead of profile, while VAT and income tax are slightly behind profile. Income tax receipts at end October were broadly in line with profile, down just 0.6%, or €94 million against target. However, receipts were €577 million, or 4.2% higher in year-on-year terms. This slight underperformance against profile is due to a combination of weak dirt receipts and an underperformance in the PAYE element of the universal social charge. Reflecting lower than expected interest rates, 2016 dirt receipts are about €130 million below profile, which is larger than the amount of underperformance in income tax in the year to date. The PAYE element of USC is about €195 million, or 7% below profile. This is due to a combination of factors. Firstly, the final USC yield for 2015 was almost €100 million lower than expected at the time of the budget 2016, meaning that the base for the 2016 forecast was too high. Secondly, the Revenue Commissioners updated their method of estimating the first and full year costs of new tax measures with effect from July of 2016. An analysis of the first and full year apportionment of costs was undertaken to ensure the estimated distribution is as accurate as possible. As a result, more costs yields of new income tax measures are now attributed to the first year, which results in consequential years lower and a carryover cost in the second year. So while the full year cost of the USC tax measures introduced in Budget 2016 did not change, an increased allocation of that cost the first year means that more of the costs are being incurred in 2016 than was previously estimated.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. Deputy.
Well, I'm aware of the part the month of October plays in VAT, Minister, in accounting terms, but given the fact that you're 300 million short of profile, is there any indication that already, for example, cross-border trade, the falls in sterling and so on, is affecting VAT returns, and that we're beginning already to see impacts from Brexit? And likewise, obviously, you're going to need 2 very strong months now in November, December on the income tax and USC returns, which are also nearly 100 million behind profile. And given the grave uncertainties of Brexit and indeed the Trump election, is it a case now that it's going to be a very, very close-run race in terms of your projections of the 2016 budget, and to some extent the base figures now for 2017, which you presented a few weeks ago, are beginning to unravel? I think it was Deputy Cleary or who told us this morning, for example, the recommendation in the Garda dispute would cost, I think, perhaps 50 billion. The Minister has conceded that. 50 million rather, sorry, 50 million. And so, yeah, are we beginning to see a sign of signs here of a faltering economy and, in fact, of problems for your budgets?
There are swings and roundabouts in every month's Exchequer returns. Some taxes are up, some taxes are down. But what has happened in the first 10 months of the year is that the taxes received by the Exchequer are 630 million ahead of forecast. Now, we made additional expenditure commitments during the summer. more for about $500,000 for about $500 million for health, some extra money for justice, some extra money for flood damage to the roads, some extra money for the summer repair scheme in schools, and so on. And then there's the Christmas bonus that wasn't provided for in the last budget. So we need another 250, 300 million or so to pay for the extra expenditure committed. But we're confident that that will come in the last 2 months of the year. November, obviously, being the month when self-employed persons make their returns, and the month when corporation tax is finalised for most companies. We expect strong months in the 2 months that remain. So there are no signs of the decline that you suggest. But of course, we're always very watchful on these matters,
Minister. Deputy Broughan.
especially with Brexit and various international events that are occurring.
Deputy Broughan.
Minister, obviously you have the extra spending, I think the 550 million that you refer to, but given this apparent slowdown in revenues for across a wide area of our tax base, does it again mean, and if you want to meet your deficit target, doesn't it mean that your end of year figures are going to be extremely tight? And as I said, the base for budget 2014, may be significantly changed as a result of the hopefully settlement in the Garda dispute and the teachers dispute and so on, and obviously the beginning of the planning for the replacement of Lansdowne Road and for restoration. And just the other thing, I mean, we're depending very heavily now, obviously, on corporation tax. We had a lot of discussions about that at the Budget Committee. Is that not a concern about the sustainability of that, given tax inversions and the fact that you're beginning to implement the BEPS programme?
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Broughan. Minister, a minute to conclude.
Analysis. Tax flows are quite strong. They're 630 million ahead of budget and of the forecast provided on a monthly basis by the Revenue and the Department of Finance. And yes, we need a strong last 2 months to fulfil the commitments made on the expenditure side, but we expect to be in a position to do that. And as to the base for next year, we think that about $2.5 billion additional tax will be collected in 2017 above what will be collected in 2016. On the question of corporation tax, the international reforms that are taking place, driven by the OECD, are more likely to enhance the tax take in Ireland than to reduce it. And that has been the experience for 2016 and 2015.
Thank you, Minister. Tagan and Sheo,